All right, good evening, afternoon, or morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Terrell Williams, and I serve as the Associate Director for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Office of Admissions at MIT Sloan. I want to thank you all for joining us for another installment of our Identity and Inclusion series. At this event tonight, we will focus on those who identify as Asian American. I'm excited about the opportunity to host tonight's event. I am joined by one of my colleagues, Brian, who will be monitoring the Q&A chat feature. So we'll flag some questions for the panelists to answer live. We are joined by a dynamic group of panelists, and I'll have them introduce themselves shortly. But before we begin, I have some housekeeping items for us to consider moving forward. So I want to start off with our land acknowledgement. So MIT acknowledges the indigenous people as traditional stewards of the land and the enduring relationship that exists between them and the traditional territories. The land on which we sit is a traditional unceded territory of the Wampanoag Nation. We acknowledge the painful history of genocide and forced occupation of their territory, and we honor and respect the many diverse indigenous people connected from time immemorial to this land on which we now gather. Our mission at MIT Sloan is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world and to generate ideas that advance the management practice. I firmly believe that through tonight's panel, as well as additional recruiting activities that you select to participate in, you will see our commitment to creating a more diverse and inclusive community. I'd like to highlight our robust portfolio of programs. Although our panelists for this evening are more familiar with MBA, LGO, and our Masters of Finance programs, we do serve the entire community here at Sloan and support students across the entire portfolio and the larger MIT ecosystem. Now I want to introduce our student moderator for this evening. Minnie, will you please share a brief intro about yourself and introduce our panelists for the session?
Thank you, Terrell. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Minnie Fu, and I am a second-year MBA class of 2024 here at MIT Sloan. Really welcome to our event tonight, and hopefully this panel will give you some insights into how it is like to be at Sloan and also part of the Asian American Alliance, or what we call AAA. A bit about myself, I interned as a product manager at the summer after my first year at Sloan. Prior to Sloan, spent about 6 years in go-to-market in tech companies and financial services. And tonight, we're really excited to have our amazing panel here with us to give you some insights into what it's like to be at Sloan. So we have Tom, Liz, Chris, as well as Jesse. In a bit, I will actually let the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll go into a moderated panel. And at the end, we'll definitely reserve lots of time for you to ask questions and hopefully address as many of your curiosity as possible. So why don't we get started? We'll probably start with Liz.
Thanks, Minnie. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Hong. I'm a second-year MBA student, just like Minnie, at Sloan. Prior to Sloan, worked in finance, primarily in investment banking and private equity, as well as dabbling in an elder care startup for my pre-MBA internship. So this past summer, I worked in private equity operations at a healthcare private equity firm that invests in providing better care to underserved populations. And at Sloan, I'm really involved with Sloan Senate as the co-president, as well as the entrepreneurship ecosystem.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. And now Tom.
Cool. Well, pleasure to meet you, everybody. My name is Tom. I'm proud to be a graduate from a different decade. Reminds me how old I am. I'm a graduate from 2019 MBA program. Currently, I'm doing product management at Amazon. Prior to MBA, I came from management consulting, and after MBA, I worked in a space technology firm, as well as moved into a venture studio for a few years, and then finally moved my way into the big tech. So pleasure to help. One thing I might want to add is when I was back in school, we actually didn't have Asian American Alliance as a formal affinity group, and my colleagues and I, we actually kind of started the initiative together while we were in school, and then it's great to see this kind of group just continue to grow and scale and continue to thrive. So happy to be part of this conversation today.
So incredible to have you, Tom, and love to have the founding member on the panel today. So we'll definitely dig a little more into that. And Chris.
Hi, everyone. My name's Chris Loy. I am part of the class of 2021. I was part of the leaders for global operations program, so dual degree with MBA as well as with the School of Electrical Engineering, Computer Science. Prior to MBA or prior to Sloan, I was a systems engineer at a defense contractor. So made a little bit of pivot afterwards. So now I've been at Verizon for the past 2 years since I graduated. I started out in a supply chain role, but I have moved over into a strategy role, which I owe to my MBA. I am thankful for Tom. I kind of took over the nascent Asian American Alliance right after Tom graduated, and I'm happy to be part of the community as well. So thanks. Looking forward to this.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Very much, very welcome as well. And last but not least, Jessie.
Hey everyone, I'm Jessie Wu. I was part of the 2022 MFin program and simultaneously completed my sustainability certificate while I was there. Prior to Sloan, I worked in finance and then dabbled a little bit in impact investing while at Sloan, and then since then have pivoted into early stage tech investing. It's so cool to meet so many AAA leaders in this group. I was the AAA co-pres between 2021 and 2022. So it's nice to see that torch get passed along.
Amazing. Thank you, Jessie. And thanks everyone for the introduction. So hopefully even by now, everyone can see that we have such a great panel of diverse experiences, even where you're based, and as well as different experiences at Sloan. So we can definitely have a lot to start with for tonight's panel. So given, I think Jessie mentioned that we do have lots of leaders of AAA and also of our entire class on the panel today, maybe we'll just start with kind of tell us a little bit about your involvement with AAA when you're at Sloan. How did you get into the leadership role or the founding role? And what was the best part about that part of your experience? Maybe we'll start with Tom.
Yeah, I think, man, I'm just walking through the memory lane at this point. I think what for us, I think back when Asian American Alliance wasn't a formal affinity group, what we found out was there are pockets of those who identify themselves as Asian Americans, or whether South Asian, East Asian, or some sort of an Asian heritage. We had a very fragmented groups forming a very little communities within the campus. And there wasn't any kind of common denominator tying the dots across different individuals like this, just like we had for different affinity groups. So I think during our first year spring, some of my colleagues and I, we actually took the opportunity and say like, hey, maybe this is a great chance for us to establish that common thread that we always needed. And I think starting from our spring of the first year, we registered as an affinity group formally, and we started to have a lot more centralized events and gatherings and support communities for our Asian American community. And I think there was a pretty big shift in a lot of the dynamics in our community, where we had a common thread for people to always come back to and always share some of the things that they were going through that might identify to their heritage or ethnicity. So I think having a community like this, I think, changed a lot for our dynamics and community groups. A lot of this actually continued after our graduation. So I think for us, I think this has been a great platform for us to connect and bond and also continue the bond after graduation. It's been 5 years. So I think for us, it's been a very privilege to have a community like this.
Awesome. Yeah, would love to hear more about the post-graduation engagement as well. And speaking of, there's actually a AAA barbecue happening right now, which unfortunately we can't go to because of this. Love to be here with you when that happens. So to your point about community, it's absolutely growing and really important to many of us at Sloan. So same question to Chris and Jessie as well. How did you get into the leadership role? What was your experience like?
I'll say for me, so it was obviously a very nascent group. You know, Tom and his team did a great job of establishing it. So it was just established when I got there. And, you know, I had been part of various other groups in different places. And I thought that, you know, a nascent group would be a great place to kind of start bringing these people together. I know talking to them, still working on how you break into those groups that you're not currently in. How do you get all these people together? Our time was cut a little short by the pandemic and kind of forcing everything virtual right off the bat. I will say one of the most impactful things that I think I got to be part of is we did get to do a virtual webinar as part of kind of beginning of the pandemic, when Asian American hate was going high, like Stop AAIP hate, a lot of Chinese discrimination. So I got to help organize a panel for the Sloan body, for the greater Sloan body, that they were able to hear from some of the students, just understanding kind of their backgrounds, what they thought about that, how like being Asian American is important to them, and kind of how that interacts now with this Stop AAIP hate that was emerging during the pandemic. So just being part of that was really impactful to me, just to kind of be able to bring that to the broader audience, right? So you have students, you have allies at Sloan who are not Asian American, but want to know about that experience and how that impacts you, and how are you feeling, really? So that was my most impactful thing that I got out of being part of AAA.
I think that was an interesting time also for us. We took on the reins right when we sort of were coming out of the pandemic. And so one of the first big events that we did, we focused a lot more on social because we really wanted to build that community, really wanted to foster the right groups. And so one of the first events that we did actually was the barbecue. And it's good to hear that it's actually been recurring. And I remember we, randomly chose a rooftop near campus. And because it was coming out of the pandemic, there were so many people interested that had like registered interest. And we had people at the door timing for just to make sure that we were within like the social distancing guidelines and the number of people we could have under the same roof. So what we learned really coming out of the pandemic was that there are people of this group or who identify or partners and supporters of the Asian American group. They have a yearning to be a part of this community, and they're looking for the platform and the space to actually create meaningful relationships. And all the people that I met through this group, one thing that we did was we wanted to create mentorship across programs. Within our year, we had people that were part of the Sloan Fellows group, the MFin program, the MBAs that sort of formed the core leadership team. And so this really went cross-program. It gave you an opportunity to meet people from all different walks of life, different backgrounds. And so really, I think under the big umbrella of Asian American community, there were so many different pockets of people and groups that created the space for people of all backgrounds to feel included. And so I think that's something that's really, really special about this particular affinity group.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think Jesse and Chris, you guys did so much amazing work during COVID as well. I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. But right now it's definitely alive, well, and growing. So that's really incredible. And I think what all three of you touched on was the kind of concept and also the value of Sloan, and that is belonging and community. So not just building a community of specific affinity groups, but also interacting with different cultures, different types of identity, and also across different programs, right? So there are just so many of these layers that we need to dig through. So maybe the next question for Liz is, since you're also our co-president of the class, how has your experience been with AAA and also with all the different affinity groups on campus, and how do you see students interacting now?
Yeah, for sure. I think the foundation was laid very strong by the folks who spoke earlier. But yeah, within AAA, I would say there have been so many social events, like Jesse said, really, the interest is really there. And so I remember going to the barbecue last year and meeting a ton of people who ended up being my very close friends afterwards. And then even more informally, I think that within AAA, there's been this sponsorship for people to host smaller events too, and to meet people with similar interests. So, last year, I remember I was a first year and I was part of a family group, and we were paired based on our career interests. Mine was entrepreneurship. And, I've continued to interact with the now alumni who are in my family group, just looking for that kind of encouragement as well as just guidance, since there are so many wonderful resources at MIT. And then beyond that, actually, with the current AAA co-president, Jimmy, who unfortunately couldn't be here, last year we organized a Korean barbecue and soju night that was co-sponsored by AAA and the Korea Club. And that was a really wonderful opportunity to actually share about Korean barbecue and soju. And for some of the people who came, it actually was their first time having Korean barbecue and soju. And so it was a really proud moment for me as a Korean American to kind of share parts of my culture through food, which I'd say is one of our love languages. So, you know, that kind of openness from our classmates to trying different things. 10% of our MBA class came to this dinner. That was really, really special. So yeah, I think that within the affinity group community, AAA has just created a really safe space for people to take what they want from it, as well as just to get that, you know, kind of bravery and support to go and try new things. I think that my decision to run for Senate co-president, to kind of be the co-president of the entire MIT Sloan student government, that partially came from the support that I had from the Asian American community. So it's definitely very strong, and similar to the whole Sloan experience, very supportive.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Liz. I do love going to all these cultural events as well. For myself, not even just within AAA, but just any events that happen on campus at Sloan. So I think on that thread, is there any fun memories that you all remembered from any favorite AAA events, or actually cultural events from other clubs that you remember during your time at Sloan? I can open it up to anyone who has something that comes to mind.
I can go. I think my favorite event was actually the AAA ski trip. And I think that might have actually been where I met you, Minnie. But we had a number of different houses, and some people who didn't even ski came on the trip. And it was really nice to meet folks who were first years, second years in different oceans, as well as I think there were a couple folks from different programs. So a really great chance to just meet people and kind of enjoy what the Northeast has to offer, which is, you know, all the winter sports and soju.
Awesome. Anyone else? Maybe if Tom, you remember anything that you guys launched since your first founding year of AAA?
Yeah, I think one of the events that we launched then was we actually did like a winter retreat. It wasn't necessarily like a ski retreat, but it was the first retreat we actually did formally for Asian American community. I think we went to New Hampshire and got like a really big Airbnb where we had, you know, 20 people, 25 people staying all at the same house. And I think I'd love to kind of refer to what Liz mentioned. I think what that kind of gave us was it really crossed the kind of the cohort, the ocean, or any class boundaries, and gave us an opportunity to like get to know each other as a human. I think that was really awesome. Where I think if I remember my Sloan days, it's so easy to get pulled into so many different things and just get overwhelmed by the speed of the semesters, right? There's so many clubs, so many recruiting events, and then classes are intense, and LGOs, I don't know how you guys even did it, right? Like it's just so overwhelming at the same time. But I think what it created for us was, it was literally a retreat where you put, you know, 20, 30 people out of the Cambridge environment into an isolated place where, okay, let's forget about all these things, the fast stuff going on, and then let's just get to know each other as just a human being. I think that gave us a really good, firm foundation for a lot of first years to kind of start off their kind of semesters, and then for second years to like connect with different classes. So I think that's been a pretty big memorable experience for me.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. And that's really interesting that you mentioned this is kind of something outside of your professional development and maybe classes as well as Sloan, and to build a community that's purely almost, you know, for emotional support, and also just to have a real community here at Sloan. Kind of going back to what Liz also mentioned, that she also joined the family dinner that's kind of also related to her professional development. And so I'm just curious to also hear from Chris and Jesse in terms of how do you see the AAA community as, do you see it more as kind of a supportive system, like a support system on campus for you, or does the professional development come into the picture as well? And if the latter, how does the affinity group also help you with you professionally?
I'll say that I primarily use it kind of socially. I did have quite a few classmates who were, I think, professionally were in the right directions that I wanted to go, that were already, well versed in those areas, and I could tap on those people. But as a whole, I think the community for us was very much, particularly with COVID and pandemic, I think it was very much trying to get people together, trying to get people to feel closer. When you're at minimum 6 feet apart, usually halfway across the country, it's sometimes hard to feel like you're still close to these people. So for us, it was very much a community building at affinity group.
I'd say the same. Although I would say that I met some of my closest friends at Sloan from being a part of AAA. Like, we still do annual gatherings. Like, we're going to Vietnam this year for someone's 40th birthday. So there's still a lot of that connectivity coming out of it. I would say from just more coming out of Sloan and having this and identifying or being associated with Asian American community, I think there are lots of smaller pockets of alumni that have built offshoots of that in their respective fields. And so, for example, here in the Bay, I work in venture capital. And so there's a subset of that that's specifically, Asian Americans in venture. And there is a good sizable Sloan community out here for that too. And so not necessarily, I think the club itself has taken in different forms throughout the decades or throughout generations, but like just thinking about that identity, I think that ticker is still very relevant.
And if I may, Minnie, if I may add just like one more point. I personally benefited a lot professionally from this group, because I think when you do join as a first year, you tend to lean a lot on the second years to kind of guide you through the process and then kind of explain to you some ropes around, especially during the first semesters, right? And when you first join, I think, well, sometimes it's kind of a little bit difficult to reach out to the second years and ask for help and things like that. I think for me, when I was a first year, I leaned pretty heavily on some of like the select members from Asian American communities to kind of help me throughout my professional development. And I think because that kind of community and the platform enabled forming some of the bonds that I couldn't do it in different platforms, I think I benefited a lot from, some of my colleagues who already went through the product manager path, and some of the members who have already established contacts at different companies. And because I knew them and they were like my older brothers and sisters and kind of like my mentors, they were willing to kind of connect me to the people that I needed, help me prepare for the right interviews. And I think along this process, I think I benefited a lot, not just from a kind of social and emotional perspective, but from a professional development purposes too. So I think I know that we do emphasize a lot of kind of fun aspects of these communities, but I think it's really up to how you use this community, right? If you want to kind of dedicate this into a more of a kind of social aspect, I think that's what you make of it. But if you want to take it to the next level and say like, hey, using this bridge, I'll love to kind of see what it can do for me professionally, I think the world is kind of oyster for you.
Thank you, Tom. That's such a good summary of kind of what we all talked about. And I really love the point about how it's up to you, how you want to use the community to support you in any way that you need. And I remember I went on the ski trip with Liz, and I had a couple of product managers in my house who were in the second year. And then while being on a ski trip, we talked a lot about recruiting interviews. It wasn't anything that's professional specifically, but it was such good insights and support for me personally as well. Great, thank you for that. And I think you mentioned this in the beginning, and Jesse also mentioned the alumni piece as well of the AAA community going beyond Sloan. So I think maybe it'll be great for us to hear a little bit about how that works really, I think after graduation, for Tom, Jesse, and Chris. Have you been in touch with the AAA alumni regularly? Is there an active club or community that's also around where you are? And how do people generally stay in touch? Maybe we can start with Jesse, because you last spoke about it.
I'd say there's pockets of Asian Americans. So I'm West Coast based. And so there is a pretty strong Sloan community out here. And I think within that broader Sloan MIT of Northern California and alumni club, there's offshoots of that focus on the industry side. And I have met a lot. I actually work for a firm, and the general partner of my firm was also, I think she was a 96 Sloan grad. Also Asian American as well. And so through that, I think that shows the strength of network. And I'm pretty sure I got this job because of that Sloan connection. So there's definitely a lot of that alumni connection and connectivity, and having that shared experience going through it together was really, really helpful. And then even coming out here, we have gatherings. I think it's a little more, inclusive of other cultural groups, but broadly speaking, within this space, we have, quarterly gatherings. So we are a pretty tight community of Sloan alumni out here.
Awesome. And Chris as well, from your perspective.
Yeah, I'll say I don't have a lot of. We kind of split up a lot, but I'm still friends with the president of the AAA from my co-president. She actually lives like a couple of minutes away, so she looks pretty close, and we hang out every once in a while. I think we do have an alumni basis that does actually come together, and we haven't necessarily done anything on the professional side. I'm considering like trying to network with them a little bit more and make better use of that professionally. But there's still a group of us around here in the area, particularly from AAA, that do spend time together. And it's good to just have people in the area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, and that was, again, well said about how people in touch. And I personally look forward to how people will stay in touch beyond graduation as well, which is approaching almost too soon. So hopefully we'll make our second year as good as it can be. And I do think it's also part of the audience question, but I think we touched on it as well, but I just want to dig a little deeper into how affinity groups, or actually just all the, student clubs at Sloan helped you with your professional development, whether I think for Liz will be for internship, perhaps this past summer, and then for the others, kind of your career right after Sloan, and if, it helped you even beyond the first year or two as well. Maybe Liz can start.
Yeah, I would say, well, first, as we've emphasized, kind of that mentorship as well as support system has helped me I would say I was definitely looking across the gamut at many different types of internships, and ultimately just having folks who had gone through an entrepreneurial journey before, that helped me in figuring out like what I was looking for out of my summer internship. So that was really helpful in terms of professional development, but also in terms of like club engagement. I think something that's been really, really valuable is, previously I mentioned I was an investor, and I think back then it was a lot of kind of leading with, you're in a position of power when you're giving money to a company. And when I asked for something from a company, usually I could expect that the deliverable would be given. And I think in MBA, as well as running Sloan Senate, the student government, it's helped me to practice kind of leadership amongst peers and leading without real power. And I think that will be so valuable in whatever I go into after school. So I'd say that's kind of how the extracurricular has played into my professional development.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump in?
I think for me, it's great. So I came in not knowing a lot about what people come out of school for an MBA with. So for me, maybe this isn't like the best example, but like I got a good sense of what professionally perhaps I didn't want to do just by interacting with these different clubs, being part of them, spending some time and learning, for example, what the management consulting team or group is doing, and what's entailed in that recruiting process, or what's entailed in product management. So I got to learn a decent amount about what's kind of there. As a person who really had no idea going in, it really helped focus me a little bit better in terms of what I was looking for and what I potentially wasn't looking for.
Tom and Jesse, anything to add to that part before we kind of go into our closing of this part of the panel?
And this is just overall kind of club engagement, right? Not necessarily just for the AAA.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, I think engaging in I'll kind of talk about like I personally benefited a lot out of AAA because I think I really try to squeeze like every juice out of it in a good, positive light. So I'll just kind of talk about kind of what I personally gained out of it, and then kind of what I also kind of developed as a kind of professional skills as a kind of byproduct. Like for me, I kind of, if I honestly do a candid reflection of my MBA experience, I think it was just a lot of confusion and chaos, right? Like I think oftentimes I'm like, okay, what am I doing? Why am I here? And you're constantly just kind of rethinking, well, I thought I wanted to do product management, but should I just do it with like a big tech? I don't know, right? So I think like, and somebody's doing some sort of a recruiting event. I'm like, I kind of don't want to do it, but should I go? Everybody's going, right? You just kind of get pulled into so many different directions. And I found it very confusing and chaotic. And for me, what kind of Asian American community and the club that we had kind of gave me was I had a couple mentors from this community who was kind of acting more like my Yoda, if you will. They were just kind of doing a lot of reflective conversation with me where like we just kind of literally sat down and say like, hey, Tom, like if you do an honest reflection, like what is it that you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And having some sort of a very trusted soundboard to help me kind of define what direction I want to go professionally was really helpful for me, let alone just the skills itself. And I still keep in touch with those individuals. And those were all from my AAA community, right? So in that kind of setting direction and getting a lot of momentum towards pursuing certain goals, I gained a lot of that through AAA. And when I officially started to kind of make this as a formal organization and start running this across, 50 plus individuals across the campus, I think what I found a lot was there's a lot of logistical pieces in kind of running organizations like this. But I think what I had to kind of learn a lot was kind of why certain people are asking for certain things, right? So we had to kind of dissect a lot of people into like, there were a lot of questions into like, what defines AAA? How do I have to be a certain race to join a AAA? Like, why don't I get this, but this person get this? And I think there's a lot of like delicate kind of human interaction aspect that we had to kind of navigate as we kind of build this platform. And I think coming after graduation into a formal workplace, I think that type of leadership training, I think came in really handy. I think that emotional intelligence and kind of running a large organization, I think even after a few years, I think that came to me as a really tangible skills that I get to use every day.
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Tom. Yeah, that's definitely a very unique take and very useful for all of us to take with us throughout our MBA journey here at Sloan. So we're going to move on to the audience questions in just a bit, but I do want to do a final fire round very quickly to ask all of our panelists, what is one thing that you remember that you really love about Sloan, or your favorite thing about Sloan? This could be the reason why you came to Sloan, could be something you discovered while you were here that kind of stuck with you until this point. So short and sweet. Maybe we'll start with the Chris.
All right. This may be a cop-out, but I really love the community. Like it's such an engaging, such a supporting, such a strong community that I felt like I was making it's so easy to make friends. It's so easy to find people who are really into the same things you are, or maybe even find people that aren't, and you learn from them and you grow from them. It's such a tight-knit community that was the thing that I loved being at Sloan.
Awesome. Liz?
I have the same answer. Definitely the community. I'm sure that if you've been attending these panels, you've heard kind of the term Sloanies helping Sloanies. And I really think that's so true. That just basically means, we look out for each other. And I think that's part of the small class size, as well as just admissions doing a great job of curating a really inclusive class. So I think from everything from someone messaging me like, where should I go for Asian food? When my SO comes to visit, to, even just people referring others to jobs that maybe they turned down or used to work at. I think there's just a really, really supportive community. And we like to have fun together as well.
Thank you, Liz. Jessie?
I guess for me, I'm going to take it a little bit of a different direction. I think Sloan has really taught me to be the change I want to see. I think if you just hear how AAA has even evolved across from, call it 2019 all the way to now, every year there's a little bit of a different flavor to it. And the size of the community also is expanding exponentially. And so from if there's things that you want to do, changes you want to see, maybe you came from a very stale, slow moving corporate, and you're looking to have a little bit of a test ground to see, hey, can I maybe try some of my leadership skills, organizational skills, ability to rally people around me. I think this is a great place to do that. Coupled with the diversity of coursework and the diversity of community, I think just there's a lot that could happen here. So that's what's most exciting about Sloan for me.
Love that. Tom?
I think for me is boldness and humility. I among the schools that I toured and communicated a lot, I found a lot of the Sloan alumni, the students, very bold to take a shot in what they really wanted to do. Especially like if you're interested in like an entrepreneurship or tech related ideas. I found a lot of people taking a lot of bold stands to like really grab what they were asking for. And I think that was really inspiring. And for me, also, there are a lot of qualified people and high performing people in the community, but I also find those individuals very humble and not very braggy and arrogant in what they do. And I think that made the community very stand out for me. And that made me want to be part of this community.
Amazing. Thank you, Tom. And now let's move on to the audience questions. We have a lot. Probably won't have enough time to go through all of them, but we'll do our best. So we'll pick one panelist to answer each of these questions. Starting from the top, reflecting on your journey, are there things that you would do differently to approach your application? And how did you weigh the ROI of whether or not to obtain your MBA? This one I'll probably throw to Liz because it's the most recent, probably to you.
Yeah, I think so. I actually went to an undergraduate business school, so it was definitely something that I weighed pretty heavily. I think the questions that you should ask yourself are kind of, one, what am I looking to get out of this, and like what are the theses that I want to test. For me, part of the ROI was I knew I wanted to either start my own company or go to an earlier stage company. So this felt like a really great opportunity for me to try multiple things within a 2-year span that was kind of low risk. An MBA on your resume is definitely not a sign that you've been shirking, but you get kind of more freedom to think more broadly about life as well as your career. In terms of approaching the application, this is actually what I did, so it's not something I would do differently, but something I would encourage folks to do is really take the application process seriously, to do some deeper thinking and more self-reflection. I think it's really easy when you're working really hard to kind of just be heads down and not thinking about the big picture or what you ultimately are trying to do with your life as well as your career. So I would take this time to really think about that and to channel that into your application.
Great, thank you, Liz. Next question, how does the AAA balance, oops, sorry, I skipped one. What were some challenges during the process of formation for AAA? I think that one's for Tom.
I don't think there were any like a logistical challenges. I think maybe like it was probably just taking a just bold step to just do it, right? I think other than that, I think once you kind of decide to do, I think the Sloan itself has been very supportive in forming that community. So I think other than the decision to start itself, I think logistically it hasn't been very, the implementation itself has been pretty smooth. If I were to kind of think about like maybe a challenge was when we initially formed it, I think there were a lot of questions from different affinity groups and what qualifies Asian American, like, right? Like if I'm this race, can I join? If I'm this race, I cannot. I think there are little delicate questions like this where we said like, we don't draw any boundaries here, right? I think those are some of the delicate boundaries that we had to kind of navigate. But in terms of the formation of the community and building it from the ground up, I think it just took a decision and just a step forward.
Thank you, Tom. And this kind of nicely segues into the next question. How does the AAA balance its focus between domestic and foreign Asian students' experiences? Maybe we could do Jesse for this one.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about it, and feel free to add on. So for us, one thing that we really did was try to partner with other clubs on campus that were more focused on international student experiences. So for example, beginning of the school year, we worked with the Japan club and did an event with them. And then I think later in the year, we also did, sake night. We've also done, soju nights and Korean barbecue. And so we really tried to partner with those student clubs that had more of, a foreign Asian student experience or student body, and really try to marinate the two groups to create sort of like a fun social interaction between the two of them. And I think from there, obviously, with the people you meet through these events, it's a great way to network and then build that formal bond, just to understand what it's like from both sides of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even for me, I think at AAA events, I definitely see a mix of Asian Americans as well as international students. So there is absolutely no boundary. And even just anyone who is not Asian and wants to just learn about the culture, I think would definitely open our doors to them as well. The next question is, how many percentage of alumni come from the Sloan Fellow MBA program? I think that one might have to defer to Brian or Terrell to help us out. Yeah, we can get.
Minnie, can you hear me?
There's an echo, but perfect. Should be good now.
How about now?
Perfect.
Sorry, some technical difficulties. I think it's raining outside. I think my power just went out briefly. Sorry about that.
Hope you're all right. All good.
So we were at the closing part.
No, I was just asking how many percentage of alumni come from the Sloan Fellow MBA programs, like when you might need some statistics from your end, but.
Is it pertaining to Asian Americans in general or just general population every year?
I think the question is just general, but we can.
So generally, we enroll about 120 Sloan Fellows. So annually graduate those about at that particular clip. So we do have a large alumni base for our Sloan Fellows as well as our traditional MBA program.
Amazing. Thank you. Sorry to pull you out out of the blue. And amazing. We have a couple more. Next question is, how did your did your Sloan coursework, particularly those not specifically built for and around D&I curriculum, demonstrate inclusion? I do very much love this question. I will open it up to anyone who has examples to share, if any.
Yeah, I actually took a coursework that was a pilot back then. It was, I think it was co-instructed by Kara Blackburn. And I forgot her last name, but her first name started with Erin. She was one of the OP professors. It was actually named as a D&I, diversity and inclusion in a professional setting. I'm not sure if that class is still kind of around. But we actually it was a more of a seminar event where we met once a week, and that we basically talked about a lot of kind of gray areas and the delicacies around kind of diversity, the race, gender, and like the implications of how we want to behave at work and in school. And I think that was a really big a platform for us to gather. I think there was a lot of mixed population from different demographics. They were talking heatedly about kind of, you know, the racisms they have experienced or other delicate situations they have experienced in workplace and whatnots. And I think as a class, we just kind of constructively talked about different perspectives in navigating those situations. I still remember that class really vividly, and the WhatsApp group from that class still kind of goes on. So I think that class has been a particularly very helpful a door opener for a candid conversation for us.
Amazing. Thank you, Tom. And if I may add to a non-curriculum related inclusion behavior is that most of the, pretty much actually all the professors here at Sloan, in my experience, would always ask for people how they pronounce their names before kind of school officially starts. So in the beginning of the semester, everyone's really humble about learning pronunciation, pronouns, if you want to bring that up. So I think there's definitely a sense of inclusion just even in the classroom when you are going through your regular classes. Great. And the next one is, what particular challenges or opportunities for Asian students you see during the MBA program? And I also wonder any safety issues around the campus, if any. This one, maybe Chris, if you want to start your time, and Liz could speak to the more recent.
Sorry, what are the challenges or experiences as a Asian American?
Challenges or opportunities.
Challenges or opportunities. I think I don't know if I have an opinion on this one. I have a good example for this. Sorry.
All good. Yeah, I think that's probably a great thing that there you can't think of any challenges that comes to mind. And the experience is very positive. Is there anyone else who wants to jump in or have an example on that? Cool. If not, we can absolutely move on. And Rachel, if you have any other questions around that, feel free to follow up, and happy to speak more about that. And around safety, I think the campus is very, very safe. I personally have never had any incidents, and most of the classmates are able to walk around campus like any time of the day. So I personally feel that it's pretty okay. And could any of the panelists speak to international opportunities offered by Sloan in Asia, like G-Lab or ASEAN Lab, any treks? Did anyone go on any of those in your time at Sloan, or have any knowledge that you want to share?
I went to 2 international events at Sloan. One was a G-Lab in the Philippines. We worked for a venture capital fund there, and just worked with a lot of kind of startups coming out of Southeast Asia, which was really exciting. We spent a month there in January. That was awesome. And when I also graduated, we also did a global startup lab in Johannesburg in South Africa. And then we basically spent a month in Johannesburg, spending a month in a university with the local university students, and we were basically teaching a curriculum there for a month. So it's been a very rich international experience sponsored through Sloan.
Amazing. Thank you, Tom. Cool. Maybe we'll just have time for one more question. I think we probably touched a little bit on this, but someone also asked, has your identity as an Asian American influenced your experience at Sloan? If anyone has any additional kind of anecdotes and experience that you want to share around that, I do think it's pretty important to kind of codify our experience and share that with the community as a closing for today. Liz, perhaps? Sorry to call on you.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I think that as an Asian American, just really proud to represent the community and also just to share my lens. I think that before school, a lot more of my friends were from the US, so I didn't think as hard about my identity as both an American and a Korean American. And so that's just been really special to delve into at school. And, I think everyone has their own unique story. So that's been really exciting to just, learn more about myself alongside others.
Amazing.
I think what I'll add is I kind of talked about the story before about how particularly during the pandemic, the AAPI hate and just getting an opportunity to talk about that. I think it was great that we could bring up those conversations and feel like you're in a safe space, that there were people out there who actually wanted to learn more, who want to understand, this isn't me. I want to know your experience. I will say, I think a lot of not overshadowed, but that was also kind of in tandem with the murder of George Floyd as well. So the whole campus had a very open and honest conversation about race and what that means. And for myself, for others, just understanding kind of how that's intrinsically tied to us, the things that you don't see as an outsider of that race or ethnicity or whatever. And just being able to open and honestly talk about it with no prejudice, with no trying to promote any ideas, just trying to learn and understand. And I'm appreciative that being able to talk about those things with classmates made me realize more about like how that impacts me or how that impacts other people's in ways that I hadn't seen.
Really appreciate that, Chris. Thanks for sharing that experience. I think it's very, very insightful. And thank you, everybody, for your amazing insights and anecdotes and memories and stories tonight. Hopefully that was a good and fun experience for you too, walking down a memory lane, recalling some of your days, if not present days, with AAA. So I think, Carol, this is all the time we have today. Right.
Thank you, Minnie. Thank you, Minnie, for passing that back to me. And thank you to the panel for providing insight into your experience at Sloan. This was a fantastic conversation, and I definitely learned a lot, minus the technical difficulties. I was able to learn everything that will help me within my role, as well as looking forward to working with AAA this year with more events planned for this upcoming fall. Oops. So for those of you who are interested in pursuing an MBA or one of our additional programs, these are the deadlines that are upcoming. So we have our round 1 deadline for MBA actually next week. So for those of you that are in the process of finalizing your application, get ready to submit those by next week, but we also have additional rounds to help you craft your applications. As a token of our appreciation, all of those who are in attendance tonight will receive an application fee waiver for one of the programs of your choice. So whichever program you're looking to apply to, you will receive an application fee waiver for that. We just ask that you use the same email that you use for tonight's event for your application so we can align those and make sure that we're providing that waiver for you. Here's some upcoming events that we have for our Identity and Inclusion series. So this is actually Thursday. We will have our Veterans, Alumni, and Current Student panel, and then we'll close out next Tuesday with our Partner and Family panel at 7 p.m. Eastern. So if you all want to come back and learn from different clubs here at Sloan, feel free to join us next week or this week for upcoming events. And we strongly encourage you to learn more about diversity and inclusion here at Sloan and remain up to date on Identity and Inclusion series, as well as what's going on with the Asian American Alliance. So you have their information there. So if you want to follow up via email with our panelists, but also with their club in general, feel free to reach out to them and they will be able to get back to you with you in a timely manner. Tonight, we want to thank you again for participating and in ways you can stay connected with our office here. So feel free to reach out to us via email or visit our website for upcoming events that we're participating in. I want to thank you again for joining us tonight and hope you all have a great evening.